which means there are no hidden fees and 100% satisfaction guaranteed.
And they will install. Mountain Home Services. This isn't going to be like some third party that comes into your house. You're going to get the same expertise that Mountain Home Services has always offered. Again, this is the company that we trust, and so can you.
Find them online at mountainhomeutah.com. That's mountainhomeutah.com.
Or give them a call at 801-543-2222. That's 801-543-2222.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates. This weekend only, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandswimspasale.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
It's a delay-free drive on the Valley freeways, but again, downtown drivers, you need to avoid northbound 7th East between 800 and 700 South due to a deadly accident where crews remain on the scene and it is blocking traffic. At Utah Opera, breathtaking voices combine with the Utah Symphony to create a musical experience unlike any other. Tickets start at $21 at utahopera.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We're going to stay in the mid-80s today and tomorrow with lows in the 50s, but Friday could break a record high for the day with a high of 89 on tap. Right now, you've got sunny skies, 79 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Both Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz are relatively new figures on the national political space. And, of course, they had a moment in the spotlight last night in the vice presidential debate. And even though they're not very well known, did they give anyone a reason to think again about what they think they know about each of them as a candidate? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
It was an interesting debate last night. Far more civil than we've seen in a lot of debates of late. So that was a refreshing surprise. Maybe a little think again moment there about how we could actually do debates and, I don't know, talk about radical stuff like policy and what it means to the American people, how it'll be paid for, and the difference that'll make in the country moving forward. They got to some of that last night, to be sure. And we'll break down everything in terms of the winners and losers, the great moments, the poor moments, all of that as we go through the day today. And then, of course, the ultimate impact. Will it move the needle at all for either of the campaigns? Does it help the top of the ticket, the presidential candidates that these two are choosing to stand behind as the VP selection? And so we'll break all of that down as we go through the day as well. I thought it was really interesting. I thought both of these candidates for vice president, I think, had some great moments during the course of the night, and they both had some moments that were suboptimal. Some were because they may have been a little over-prepared, and some may have been because they were a little under-prepared. Some may have been because they got a little bit surprised maybe by a certain line of questioning or an attack, and some because they just had their own agenda and weren't really thinking through where they needed to land on a particular answer. So for all of that, I think it's really interesting. And, of course, the framing of this is where everything goes sideways. And I'll start with the framing of the debate itself. There were many in the national media who were saying, well, this was just boring. And to me, that is an indictment on what we've come to expect out of debates. The fact that there was, not this constant barrage of verbal assaults and pejoratives we should celebrate that as a good thing, not as a boring thing, as an important good thing that leads us to better conversations. So I thought that was probably the most compelling and telling statement that came out of the media reports following the debate last night, was that some were just disappointed that it was so boring. And I'm telling you, it was not boring because there was some actual substance in there. And amazingly, they proved that they can disagree on a whole host of things and they can find common ground at the same time. They can validate one another and say, I know he wants to solve this problem. I want to solve this problem. We just have different ways of approaching that problem. But we got to get to an answer. So let's talk about it. Let's have the debate of the ideas. That's a good thing. So I actually want to begin with the end, because I thought both of these candidates were very interesting in their approach to the closing statement, knowing this would be the last word in terms of debates, because there are no other debates either between the presidential candidates or the vice presidential candidates moving forward. So let's start with where we ended. Tim Walz gave a closing statement, went back to his roots, his Midwest focus, and here's how he closed it out.
The support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Tim Walz, that was his closing statement, and I think it was a pretty effective closing statement. I think it was his best moment of the night. He had a few moments during the course of the night where he clearly had been fed so many lines, I think, by the debate prep team that he struggled to get them all out. And sometimes it felt like he was just trying to rattle them all off and sometimes missed the question or didn't get to the nuance or missed an opportunity to emphasize a point or to double down on something that was either for Vice President Harris or against the Trump ticket. But I thought his closing was good. This coalition that he talked about that Kamala Harris has built, the optimistic focus of that, the freedom for everyone to pursue their own version of the American dream. And he got some shots in there, of course, on the opposition, but then closed it out in a positive space. So, again, some good things. I think one of the elements from Tim Walz that I think we'll come back to is I think one of the reasons he struggled through some elements of the debate was because he hadn't been tested. He hasn't done hard sit-down interviews, and so there were a few moments where he was clearly a little flustered or not prepared for the kind of pushback or the kind of string of questions that was going to come. We'll come back to that. Let's go to J.D. Vance's closing statement, and we'll break down his view, what he got in, what he left on the table. Take a listen.
One of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
That was J.D. Vance, his closing statement. I thought both of these gentlemen stuck the landing when it came to what they were trying to do. Clearly, J.D. Vance was making the case of here's what we're for, and the things that the Harris campaign says they're for, they've had a chance to do for 1,400 days. So that was the compare and contrast. A lot of people felt like former President Trump should have been on that message when he debated the vice president a few weeks ago. So I thought he did do a good job of that, again, closing out with some of his own story, his own upbringing, but connecting it to things that everybody's connected to. Price of groceries, price of heating and fuel, and being able to heat your home. And so I thought there was some effectiveness there. Both sides, of course, were off and on in terms of the breakdown of that. We'll come back to that later in the show and give you some descriptions from various points of the compass and what this ultimately might mean coming forward. So we're going to stay with the conversation in terms of the debate, what went right, what went wrong, what could have been done better. We'll be joined by Jeff Greenfield from Politico coming up next, looking at what did happen and how this might impact things moving forward. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. This weekend, it's the fall return of General Conference. KSL is pleased to broadcast live the 194th semi-annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Coverage starts both Saturday and Sunday at 9:30. We invite you to join us at 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and streaming live on the app for KSL News Radio.
And now a minute of kindness brought to you by One Kind Act a Day. When a stone is tossed into a pond, it creates ripples that spread far and wide. Inspired by this concept, Bountiful Elementary in Davis School District launched a One Kind Act a Day initiative. Students and teachers committed to daily acts of kindness by recognizing and celebrating kind acts, collecting food donations, to writing essays. First grader Boston captured this beautiful initiative in his essay, calling kindness a superpower that sparks a chain reaction. All these efforts culminated in Bountiful being recognized as a certified school of kindness in an assembly where the Utah PTA and First Lady Abby Cox came and encouraged the students to continue to carry kindness into their lives. A Minute of Kindness is brought to you by One Kind Act a Day. Find more online at thepowerofkind.org. That's thepowerofkind.org.
Get up to a 30% upfront bonus to use for your retirement income, or up to 12% per year to help grow your retirement income. Whether you're in retirement or will be retiring within 10 years, Trajan Wealth can offer some of the highest guarantees in the business. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I know no one wants to work forever. We all need to retire someday, and I know you've worked hard for your money, so now is the time to guarantee it. Take advantage of up to a 30% upfront bonus bonus for your retirement income, or up to 12% per year for retirement income. Don't woulda, shoulda, coulda. Get up to a 30% bonus just for opening an account, or up to 12% per year for retirement income. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Retire the right way, the Trajan way, with Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. DBA in most states says Trajan Wealth Insurance Solutions.
Do you currently use a CPAP machine to treat sleep apnea? Are you looking for a smaller, more comfortable solution? Consider a custom-fitted oral appliance from Sound Sleep Medical. In many cases, these appliances can be as effective as CPAP, and oral appliances are usually covered by insurance or Medicare. To make an appointment or to learn more, call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-285-9731. That's 801-285-9731, or visit soundsleepmedical.com.
If you need a new roof, there's a reason IWC Roofing is the #1 residential roofing contractor in Utah. IWC has been replacing roofs for 27 years. They are professionals. You don't get some janky subcontractor fiddling around up there. You get experienced IWC employees on your roof, and they finish most jobs in a single day. They're in, they're out, and they power wash your driveway just to say thank you. Now you're wondering about the price. After all, IWC is one of the few Owens Corning Platinum certified contractors in the entire state, but they offer value pricing, and right now, take advantage of their fall special. $2,000 off your quote. And of course, they'll work with you on financing, so call IWC Roofing, the highest rated roofing contractor in Utah, plus $2,000 off. Right now, call IWC Roofing, 801-232-5690. That's 801-232-5690, or go to IWCRoofingUtah.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, air quality is in a yellow or moderate range for most of the Wasatch Front today, mostly because of smoke blowing into Utah from Oregon. Second, Utah Highway Patrol troopers say they've responded to 41 different cases of road rage since a new law increasing the penalties took effect in July. And third, a nationwide dock worker strike is now in its 2nd day. The Biden administration says they've been talking with both sides. Right now, sunny and 79 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today, as always. I'm Boyd Matheson, and we're going to stay with the question and the conversation relating to the debate last night between the vice presidential candidates, J.D. Vance, Governor Tim Walz. A lot of interesting things as people kind of unpack it a little bit, and what happened, what went well, what didn't. We want to get in some of the nuances of all that underneath some of those headlines, and it's always a great day for us when Jeff Greenfield, contributing writer at Politico magazine, joins us on the line. And Jeff, welcome back to the show. Great piece in Politico today, and a host of things I want to get to from your piece, including kind of the approach of the two candidates. And it's been interesting to me. The Democrats came out and said that J.D. Vance was scripted and slick, and the Republicans said he was smart and persuasive. Of Tim Walz, the GOP said he was bumbling and fumbling. The Dems said he was ultra authentic and Minnesota nice. And as you watched all that played out, give us first just your high-level observations from the night.
There were a couple of things. From the get-go, it was very clear what the Vance strategy was, which was to, if I can use a phrase from George Bush, be a kinder, gentler candidate. He was at pains to say, yes, Walz and I both want to help with gun violence. We both want to see housing get better. He didn't unleash any of the attacks on Walz that he has been doing, of stolen valor. He lied about his military. And that was generally effective. The second thing is, and this is one of the two major points I wanted to make, Vance has spent the last few weeks doing a lot of interviews, often with not totally friendly places.
Right.
And I think he was prepared to deal with some of the harder issues that he's raised. Walz and his running mate Kamala Harris have largely stayed away from that. They've run what I would consider a risk-averse approach. And I think it showed in that Walz often was unable to articulate his strongest points. The whole notion about what Vance and Trump were doing with Haitian immigrants in Springfield. He mentioned it, but he didn't zero in on the fact that the Republican governor is furious with his own party's candidates. And I think what this demonstrates is that sometimes you can be too cautious.
Yeah.
And I think it did hurt Walz in the sense that he had no experience in trying to formulate his best arguments in a neutral arena.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting. I'd love to unpack that just a little bit more, Jeff, because I think you've struck the real core of all of this. It seems to me that the Harris campaign came in and they got such a bump of enthusiasm coming in that it was sort of this. She was running not as an idea candidate, but as an idea as a candidate. And I think that is why she has been a little risk averse. They're sort of playing not to lose rather than playing to win. And I think it's been such a contrast with Governor Walz, who was in a lot of those hostile environments before he became a candidate, but has been pretty isolated and bubble wrapped since. Just kind of unpack that a little bit further in terms of how you see what they do with that moving forward from here, seeing that they both need to be able to articulate those points in any environment.
Well, one thing that you have to put on the table is that very soon Harris is sitting down with 60 Minutes, which is clearly not going to be a wet kiss interview. They ask tough questions, and Trump has refused. He backed out. That may go a fair way toward answering the question, why aren't you engaging more? But what I think we're going to find out from that interview is she moving beyond the anodyne scripted comments. She's asked about what are you going to do about inflation. She says, I grew up in a middle-class family. By the way, Vance's first answer last night was almost an imitation of Harris. Do you think Israel should attack Iran? Well, I grew up in a working-class family. I almost miss the days when a guy like Mitt Romney could say, I grew up really rich.
Yeah.
Or Roosevelt or Kennedy for that matter.
There you go.
So, but I do think it's important to note that a couple of things. While most of the people watching from the perspective of someone like me, who's covered politics for a while, thought in general Vance had the better of it, the focus groups didn't say that.
Yeah.
The post-debate poll showed essentially a tie. A lot of those, a lot of the focus group people who said I'm for Harris zeroed in on the one real weakness of Vance, which is who won the election last time.
Yeah.
And because he's trapped with a candidate who just completely goes ballistic on this issue, namely Trump, Vance had to tough dance. He had to go, well, let's talk about the future. And at that point, Walz was ready to say that's a very damning non-answer. And I think to a large extent, that last exchange, assuming people stayed up that late, undid a lot of what Vance was accomplishing during the rest of the debate.
Yeah, I think you were spot on in your analysis and in your piece at Politico today, talking about the fact that Vance did control a lot of the debate until he didn't. We always talk about you got to stick the landing, and the landing was J.D. Vance's weakest portion of the program, and clearly Governor Walz's strongest portion of the program. Anything else kind of stand out for you underneath a lot of the things that we're seeing in replay? Anything that you think might be part of a messaging strategy or a pivot point for either campaign moving forward?
I think as a general proposition, the Harris-Walz campaign saw that Walz still has a problem explaining some of the more challenging, to put it politely, aspects of his biography. He has this habit of embellishing. They're not mortal sin politicalized, but they are problems. Yeah. And they still obviously haven't cleaned that up. Because at this point, last night, Walz was forced to say, I really wasn't anywhere near China during Tiananmen. Again, this is not the most damning fact of somebody's life, but it's a problem. And it was an interesting psychological speculation, and I don't know what I think about this, that to some extent, Trump might be annoyed that Vance got so much better notices for his debate than Trump did, because that's something that Trump cannot stand. Yeah. It is rooted in him. I have to be the best. I always have to win. I never lose, and I'm better than anyone else. And the idea that his running mate got much better responses, is that going to bother Trump? Now, Trump came out unreservedly praising Vance, and maybe this is a foolish bit of 10-cent speculation, but it is kind of interesting. And the other question is the contrast between the civility that Vance was extending. I didn't know your son was around for a shooting. That's terrible. And the way Trump talks, to me, that was another missed opportunity for Waltz, because I was waiting for Waltz at some point to say, it's very nice we're having this civil conversation, but let me ask you something about your running mate. Do you agree with him that Harris is mentally disturbed, that she's a fascist, that she's a communist? Are these the kinds of languages you think are going to lead to more civility? The sense of missed opportunities on the part of Waltz, again, tells me that that's what happens when you don't prepare, when you're not ready, when you haven't been tested. Let me make a more general point.
Yeah.
The really amazing thing about Harris's emergence is, unlike any other candidate in the modern primary era, she didn't go through a year's worth of testing with debates and town halls and conflicts in a primary. She just emerged full blown. And so she hasn't had the experience of any other candidate since the modern era. Whether that's going to make any difference in the last several weeks, I don't know, because anybody who's going to try to predict what's going to happen after what we've already been through is kidding themselves.
Yeah, no question. And it is, that testing thing is so important. I always say, I think one of the best things that happened to candidate Barack Obama was that he had to battle all the way till June just to become the nominee, and that testing matters. And I think what you've also alluded to, Jeff, is something we often talk about, and that is that campaigns are rarely won, they're usually lost, and debates are the same. And they're usually lost not because you don't have the right skills or ability, but because your weaknesses, your untested weaknesses, become the dominant force in your behavior. And I just think we saw that.
Let me challenge you on one. I think in 1980, the one Carter-Reagan debate was won by Reagan with that classic last line, which is now what Trump is using. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That clinched the deal for him.
Yeah.
And I also think that in 92, when Clinton demonstrated a kind of personal connection to the town hall questioner that George H.W. Bush couldn't, that was both a win and a loss. So I don't mean to be difficult, but
No, that's great perspective, and that's exactly right. You saw both of that with Bill Clinton. You saw his strength, and you saw George H.W. Bush's weakness on display in that moment as well. Great stuff, as always. Jeff Greenfield, contributing writer at Politico magazine, 5-time Emmy-winning network television analyst, written multiple books about American politics, and someone we always love engaging in the conversation. Jeff, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Pleasure to be with you.
All right, that's Jeff Greenfield. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
.131 at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour: moderate or yellow air quality for the Wasatch Front today. That's mostly because of smoke blowing into Utah from fires burning in Oregon. We still have several big fires of our own in the state. The National Weather Service says 2024 has been a big year for wildfires here. It's not done yet, but the Larry H. Miller Company says the Bees' new stadium in Daybreak is on track to welcome fans by opening day in April. Larry H. Miller real estate president Brad Holmes says the only thing that could get in the way of that April goal is a bad winter.
We have the buildings that we need up out of the ground. Our crews are preparing and working as much as they can, but we hope that, day in and day out, for the most part, winter won't slow us down.
Holmes says they are working to finish as much of the stadium's exterior now so they can work covered on the inside of the stadium during the winter. Your money at this moment: the Dow up 32 to 42,189, the S&P up about 1, the NASDAQ up 38. Coming up, a dip before the warm-up. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time 132.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Jump on your brooms and join us for a fantastic fall break. Here's what's brewing. The North Logan Pumpkin Walk, October 10th through the 15th. Okay, there's no way to describe this amazing and colorful experience, but I will try. There are hundreds of carved pumpkins, plus dozens of displays crafted from painted pumpkins, gourds, and other random vegetables. You have to see it for yourself, and it's free. Celebrate Utah's Harvest Heritage October 18th and 19th at the American West Heritage Center's Fall Harvest Festival. Grain threshing, apple pressing, pony rides, train rides, antique tractors, games, and fun. Get your scream on all month long for spooky encounters on the historic downtown Logan Ghost Tour, or traipsing through a couple of giant corn mazes that may or may not be haunted. Check out live theater and music performances, great restaurants, golf, and USU football games. Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Explore Logan.com/fall.
Hi, I'm Miley O'Keefe. In competitive gymnastics, flexibility and precision are crucial, and Les Olson IT knows how important flexibility and precision are to your business. It's why they deliver the very best IT security, office equipment, collaborative technology, and so much more. Let Les Olson IT's Perfect 10 service empower your business at lesolsonit.com.
Les Olson IT.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 70 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese in the traffic center.
We've had an accident northbound the I-15 about 1300 south prior to the 6 South exit. Looks like everybody is out of traffic over to the left. Don't forget to avoid northbound 7th East between 800 and 700 south while officers are still at the scene investigating a fatal crash there. The UACPA supports certified public accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development. Find a CPA that works for you, uacpa.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Highs near 90 on Friday with a drop down to 80 on Saturday. Early next week, expect more temperatures in the mid-80s. Right now, we're at that mid-80s. It's 82 and sunny in Salt Lake City. I'm Kara Hoffelmeyer from the KSL Common Health Spirit Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As Social Security's Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund approaches potential exhaustion in 2023, a critical debate emerges about how to address this looming crisis. While conventional wisdom suggests an across-the-board benefit reduction, an alternative approach proposes leveraging presidential discretion to protect the most vulnerable recipients. So how can we balance legislative action and executive authority in addressing one of America's most pressing economic challenges that nobody seems to want to actually talk about? Well, somebody does. Andrew Biggs is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He researches Social Security reform, public and private sector compensation, and state and local government pensions, and someone we always turn to when we get to this issue. And Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
All right, so as we look at how do we address this Social Security insolvency, you are someone who is looking at this all the time and looking at all the different angles and points of the compass. First, just give us the lay of the land for our listeners of where are we, what does that look like? We mentioned 2033, but what does that actually look like when we get there?
Sure. Well, I've been working on Social Security and Social Security reform for probably 25 years. I worked in the George W. Bush White House in 2005 when he was trying to promote Social Security reform. You know, one thing that strikes me is that we've gone decades knowing we needed to fix the program and having done precisely nothing. The system is relying on its trust fund right now, and people argue whether is that real money or not, but it's money that's being transferred from the rest of the budget to Social Security, and that helps it pay full benefits. That trust fund is going to be gone in 2033. At that point, Social Security will be about 21% short of the money it needs to pay full benefits. And the way the law works is that if Social Security doesn't have enough money in its trust fund, it is not allowed to pay full benefits. The question that I asked along with my co-author, Kristen Shapiro, who's a lawyer in Washington, D.C., is what happens then? When the trust fund runs out, what actually happens? Does the president have any power to sort of avoid this disaster or to try to at least make it a little bit easier?
Yeah, and so let's go through what that actually looks like in terms of what the president could do, what the Congress needs to do, and really getting to this element. I always say that the real test of leadership, I also think it's the real test of any country, is what you choose to do when you don't have to. And I think what you have been working on is clearly in that space of things that are easy to put off, but will require some leadership to actually get done.
Oh, sure. I would much prefer that Congress acted today to try to come to some sort of bipartisan agreement on what to do about Social Security. It's easier to fix it today than if we put it off until 2033. The problem, though, is I've come to realize that Congress and our presidential candidates aren't going to do anything. I wish they would, but neither Donald Trump nor Kamala Harris seem particularly interested in taking on this difficult issue. So it's becoming more and more likely that come 2033, we're going to be staring down the barrel of the trust fund running out. And at that point, action is forced. And so the question is, what do we do then? And how do we try to make this a better process? My fear is that when the trust fund runs out and benefits would have to be cut by 21% overall, Congress would simply borrow the money. And that is the path of least resistance for them. It's the path of maximum fiscal profligacy.
Right.
But that would be a disaster for the budget. The assumption with Social Security, and this is again going back 25 years or so, is that when the trust fund runs out, whatever shortfall there is, and it's projected to be around 21%, has to be allocated equally to everyone, which means that rich retirees get a 21% cut, but so do the poorest retirees. Old retirees get the same percentage cut as young retirees. I did a study years ago where I simulated what this would mean. And if you gave everybody an across-the-board 20% benefit cut, that would double the rate of poverty among seniors. It would really have a hit even on the middle class.
Wow.
If that's what we think we're looking at, there's a good chance Congress will just borrow the money.
Mm-hmm.
What Kristen Shapiro and I looked at, though, is we think that the Supreme Court gives the president the right. He would still have to cut benefits. He can't create money out of nowhere, but he could decide in some reasonable way to cut benefits in a way that protects the people who need the system the most.
Right.
That he would have that flexibility. What we argue, and I kind of ran the numbers on this, is that if he capped benefits and said nobody's going to get, it'd be $2,050 per month, and you say you'll get your full promised benefits up to this level of $2,050 per month per retiree. that would mean that slightly over half of retirees would get every penny they've been promised. Nobody would be thrown into poverty. The middle class would have really only small reductions to their benefits, but you'd have to make much bigger benefit cuts at the top.
Mm-hmm.
The idea here is not that this would be the final solution, but the president could go into this scenario and say, hey, Congress, if you don't come up with a plan, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that prevents this total crisis and meltdown if you cut benefits by 21% for low-income people. And it says to Congress, okay, let's think about how much do we want to raise taxes to pay higher benefits to rich people? Because at the end of the day, that's the choice we have to make. We can afford to protect low-income retirees. That's not hard. But today, a high-income couple can get over $96,000 in Social Security benefits. By 2033, they'll be getting over $100,000 a year. We need to decide, how much do we want to raise taxes in order to keep those benefits rising for people? That's a more rational solution. Yeah. So our idea reduces panic, and I think tries to get Congress and the president, the two parties, thinking a little more constructively about what they need to do to fix this program.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial to get to that kind of conversation as opposed to just the cataclysmic stuff that is either and it seems that both sides are so risk averse and so worried about a campaign ad in their next election cycle that has them pushing grandma off the cliff, that no one's willing to touch it. But I love the way you frame this because it becomes a very rational, very logical conversation, even though it's based on a conversation, as you pointed out in your piece at AEI. This is what 4 decades of procrastination looks like and sounds like.
Sure, it is. We have known literally for 40 years that this is the problem that we face. We know why Social Security is facing insolvency. We know the different steps we can take to change it. But year after year, Congress said, we'd rather kick this can down the road. We don't want to make difficult choices. We're just saying if it really does come to insolvency, the trust fund, here's what the president at the time could do to make it a little bit less terrible for Americans.
Yeah.
And then start a conversation on what we want to do for the long term.
Yeah, so important. Andrew Biggs, Senior Fellow at American Enterprise Institute. Great piece. You can check that out at AEI as well as a simple plan to address Social Security insolvency. And it is a path towards the rational, reasonable, productive conversation that we have to get to because the math always wins, folks, and we got to get serious about the math. Andrew, thanks for walking us through that and connecting the dots for us and making all the dollars and cents make sense for us. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and I appreciate the chance to be with you today.
All right, Andrew Biggs, a great thinker there when it comes to Social Security issues, and this is some great math. And so, look, we can do it this way. This is what we're going to have to do. This is where the pain points will be. But here's how we can protect the poor and the most vulnerable who depend on Social Security the most. We'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Utah's biggest used RV Palooza is back and better than ever. This October 10th through the 12th at the Shops at Southtown. You're getting the best deals of the season on used travel trailers, fifth wheels, toy haulers, motorhomes, and more. Shop gently used RVs at the show and save thousands over fall pricing anywhere else. Find deals starting as low as $9,995, like on a 2021 Forest River Viking LS Series M238 LS tent camper. Plus, shop select new RVs at used pricing, not to mention blowout pricing on all remaining 2024s in stock. You'll also enjoy no payments until 2025 on approved credit. Finish your fall camping season in style without a single monthly payment. And if you've got a trade, we want it. Bring it to the show to get maximum trade-in value. We're even including a 1-year Fish Fix membership with every RV purchase. Your fast track to RV service repairs. And don't miss out on our Hunter Special section to keep your hunting season going strong. All this plus free admission to the Utah Used RV Palooza. 3 days only, October 10th through the 12th at the Shops at Southtown. Open daily at 10 a.m. Sponsored by Bish's RV. See you there.
KSL offers the best daily newsletter in the state. It's the 3 things you need to know. Every weekday, we deliver quality and relevant content to your inbox. No ads, no spam, just the 3 things you need to know to be informed about the world around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500.
Did you know that your largest investment asset might not be your retirement account or home? I'm Jay Jackson, CEO of Abacus Life, Most people don't realize that their life insurance policy is actually an asset they can sell. But for almost 20 years, Abacus has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors just like you. We've even created a free policy value calculator at abacuspays.com so you can find out in seconds what we might pay for your policy. There are no fees and no obligations, just information. Knowing the value of your life insurance policy is as important as knowing the value of your home, your equity portfolio, or your finances in total. Discover the valuable information you need to understand the current market value for your life insurance, and then get real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus. Visit abacuspays.com to learn more and use our free policy value calculator today.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy two. That's just $60 a month for 2 unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, a woman is dead after being hit head-on by a man in a stolen car fleeing from police near Valley Fair Mall this morning. The name of the 52-year-old woman has not been released. Second, over 600 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are preparing for a trip to Tallahassee. The members from Pensacola are headed to help clean up after Hurricane Helene. Third, air quality is in the yellow because of fires in Oregon blowing smoke our way. Expect skies to look much the same for about the next 3 days. It's sunny and 82 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
We've talked a lot about the debate last night, always revealing moments in that. And sometimes you score a great point, and sometimes you score a great point that maybe doesn't help you at home. We saw that last night with J.D. Vance. He revealed that he does have some economic mental capacity under the hood there, some real firepower. Sadly, the understanding he revealed last night also contradicts the person at the top of the ticket. We always talk about vice presidential debates being able to promote the top of the ticket. Last night there was one interesting point that was kind of a cross, and it's a curious one, but it's one that's super important for all of us to understand. And of course, who observed it, who got it, who wrote about it? Eric Boehm, a reporter at Reason, covers economic policy, trade policy, and the elections. And Eric, welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
All right. I loved your piece because I yelled the same thing at my TV last night of when J.D. Vance was going through an answer about the housing situation and what you do about that. And so I'm going to let you walk us through what he said and then the more important lesson underneath that that he clearly understands, and maybe the boss on the Republican side ought to think through a little bit as well.
Yeah, I yelled at the TV too. We were watching this, a bunch of us at the Reason office, and he got to this part of this one answer, and I just blurted out, "Oh, so you do get it." This was a question having to do. They talked actually quite a bit about housing policy yesterday, which is interesting for a presidential debate. Yeah. That's the sort of thing you expect more at like a city council level, but we've obviously got a bit of a housing crisis in this country, so it's worked its way up to being a national issue. I'm not sure what the president can really do about that, but glad to hear them discussing it. And at one point in this answer, it talked about he talked about a bunch of other things too, but he eventually gets to the point that, we need low energy prices and abundant energy supply, and how that helps, people be able to build more housing. And he said, quote, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. And as soon as those words came out of his mouth, I was like, oh, here, you get it. He's right. He's 100% right about this, right? This is one of the reasons why abundant and affordable energy is really important, because it makes it cheaper to build all sorts of things, not just housing, but, every factory needs energy, all that. And this is a very typical Republican conservative kind of way of understanding how the economy works, right? You want to make things, you want to make the inputs as cheap as possible so that you can, manufacture higher end goods for less, whether that's a house or a bulldozer.
Right.
It's just that understanding has kind of gone out the window in the Trump years, because you've got, tariffs basically do the same thing as higher energy prices. In fact, they're a lot more direct. For example, in the piece I wrote today, I wrote about how, the lumber on that truck in Vance's example, if that lumber came from Canada, it would have been subject to a 14% tariff. And that's going to make that lumber a heck of a lot more expensive too. So I would love to see more of this logic applied by Vance and by Republicans, and we just haven't seen it lately.
Yeah, and so I want to keep going down that path, because I was just right there thinking, okay, here he goes. He's going down this great path. He's talking about energy and how that impacts all of these things, and that pushes all these costs to everything, whether it's a house, whether it's something that you're producing, whether it's a factory that's spitting out your cereal for your breakfast. All of those things, if they have higher energy costs, those are going to get passed on. But then there's always this disconnect. You pointed out the lumber came from Canada. That's a 14.5% tariff, and so that's going to jack up the price of that home. But walk us through some other places where this disconnect of saying, okay, energy policy is really good, really important for bringing down inflation and prices, but you've also got this tariff thing that if you don't deal with this, you're sort of still stuck in the same place.
Yeah, and that's particularly true when we talk about housing, right? I started this by saying I'm not really sure there's a lot of things the president can do because so much of housing policy is really local. Some of it's state control, too. There's not much that's federal. But you know what? The one thing the president could do, a future president could do, is eliminate tariffs. I don't expect a Trump-Vance ticket to do that. But you need a lot of steel and aluminum to build houses. We've now got higher tariffs on those things, thanks to Trump and thanks to Biden, who's kept them in place too. The lumber tariffs, that actually kind of predates Trump, but it's in that same category. And then we just saw a recent increase in these lumber tariffs, this kind of ongoing, really bizarre trade fight between the U.S. and Canada over lumber, as if, cheap lumber from Canada is somehow a national security threat or something to the United States. It doesn't make any sense. Of course, they've got a lot of trees up there. Of course, we should import lumber from Canada and use it to build houses. But then you've also got, of course, Trump and Vance talking about putting tariffs on lots of other things. Vance, I've written about this recently, but Vance has talked about, toasters and other appliances that he's been using in examples in his stump speeches that he wishes were made here in the U.S. Applying tariffs to those things isn't going to make them cheaper. It's going to make them more expensive. Right. You might maybe get some more manufacturing here. I'm pretty skeptical of that. But even if you do, consumers are going to be paying a lot more. So whether you're talking about building a house or whether you're talking about filling a house with the stuff you need to live in it, all of those things are going to be more expensive if you keep putting tariffs on. And again, this line last night in the debate indicates that Vance understands this. He understands the basic economics of it, and of course he does. He's a smart guy. He's a wonky guy. He's just chosen to discard a lot of that, I think, in the service of his political ambitions, which is sad.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this across the spectrum and from both campaigns in terms of this more populist message and how they're going to deliver that populism, which again, sounds good. It's a great bumper sticker. It's an applause line at a big campaign rally. But it seems to me that both sides either know this is bad policy and are choosing just to stick with the populist point of it all, or they don't get it. And I'm not sure which of those has me more worried.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. It is both sides. I think the Republicans, I think it's more obvious because there's been this shift on the Republican side from a more free market oriented towards a more centrally planned, more tariffs, more that sort of stuff. That's more obvious, but certainly it's true on the other side too. We've just had 4 years of President Joe Biden and now Vice President Kamala Harris, talking about the need to lower prices for consumers and all of that, but at the same time, keeping tariffs in place, imposing Buy American requirements, doing all sorts of other stuff that actually doesn't, bring down whether we're going to consider it inflation or not, I don't know, but it doesn't bring down inflation, doesn't bring down prices, things that actually put upward pressure on costs. And so, yeah, you have the same dynamic happening on the other side. Every time Joe Biden talks about, some policy that's going to help American workers, I think he forgets that as soon as that worker clocks out for the day, that person becomes a consumer, and the higher prices you create to try to help the worker half of that person ends up hurting the consumer part of that person. So these are all kind of, I think it's all very muddled and kind of silly the way we try to, have policies that are going to be worker-oriented policies that end up just making everything more expensive.
Yeah, no question about it. Best of the best, Eric Boehm. I think we should nominate you to be economic czar for the country. I don't care who wins. We're gonna put you in charge.
If nominated, I will not accept. However that famous line goes, right?
Yeah.
If nominated, I
You're
won't
not going
accept.
there.
And,
That's right.
Yeah, if appointed, I will not serve. Yeah.
Because
So,
you are smarter than that, and you will live with that.
I appreciate that, but yeah, no.
Hard pass.
No thanks.
All right. Great stuff as always. Eric Boehm, reporter at Reason, covers economic policy, trade policy, and elections. You should check out his piece because it will get you thinking and thinking again about what you hear when it comes to some of these trade policies, tariffs in particular, and the impact it's going to have on you, whether you're building a house or you're filling it with stuff inside. All of these things impact all of us, and that's why it's a crucial conversation. Eric, thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Boyd.
All right, that's Eric Boehm again from Reason. Always worth reading, always gets you thinking again about what you think you know, and that's why we do this show. And that wraps up hour number 1 of the show. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next, so stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. KSL's top story this hour. The Salt Lake County Health Department confirmed a bat found in Pioneer Park tested positive for rabies yesterday. The health department says the bat had been found on September 27th and that County Animal Services reports the bat had been handled by some people in the park for an extended period of time. People who live in Daybreak are asking for a pedestrian bridge over Mountain View Corridor near where that new ballpark will be. Benyon Gardner is a member of the group Safe Streets for South Jordan. He says his group wants to reduce traffic in the area and encourage more people to walk or bike around the city safely.
A bridge over to the new Bee Stadium would allow people to ride their bike to games and also visit all the great new amenities that are going to be coming in there as well without having to get in their car and wait in traffic.
The group has reached out to UDOT to talk about the possibility, but Gardner says they have not yet submitted a formal request for the bridge. Our top national story this hour, it's day 2 of a port strike along the eastern seaboard and Gulf Coast. President Biden urged the conglomerate representing the shipping companies to come to the table soon.
Remember, we negotiated a similar strike on the West Coast before, and they worked it out. It's time. They won't even talk, so let's get that done.
The strike could affect the supply chain for a few weeks, but many large retailers have been redirecting their supply chain logistics to West Coast ports, which aren't affected. Your money at this moment, the market closed up 39 is the Dow at 42,196. The S&P's up fractionally. The NASDAQ up 14. Coming up, it's 80s all the way. KSL Weather's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Beatty, Nevada, your getaway to Death Valley, an entryway to a true desert adventure. Enjoy exciting offerings for all your senses and imagination. In Beatty, visit Eddie World, the largest candy store in Nevada, and visit their historic museum, the ghost town of Rhyolite, and see sculptures in the desert at Goldwell. Hiking, biking, and hundreds of miles of ATV trails await you. For the ultimate adventure, make Beatty, Nevada your next destination and claim a free gift at BeattyNevada.org. Wrangle up some fun at Beatty Days 2024, Friday, October 25th through Sunday, October 27th. It's old-fashioned family fun with a chili cook-off, live music, bed races, a classic car show, cornhole and horseshoe tournaments, model railroads, a parade, food and craft vendors, contests for everyone, and lots more. The fun is in Beatty, Nevada this October 25th through the 27th. Visit BeattyNevada.org for the full schedule. That's BeattyNevada.org.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
I'm Utah Tax Attorney Jordan Wilcox. Listen to what actual clients have had to say about working with us.
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm a building contractor. About a year prior to the market crashing, we had a big job that was unable to pay a bill of about 6 figures. We were still left with a very difficult situation with the IRS. Eventually, at the end of the day, I realized that the penalties and interest were growing faster than my ability to save to deal with it. I had talked to people and I felt that Jordan Wilcox represented best what I thought could help me, primarily because they were local, and I needed a bigger solution than I was coming up with. It takes too long to figure it out on your own.
Hi, I'm Jordan Wilcox. You need a tax attorney that's not afraid to fight for you. Visit taxhelput.com to schedule your free consultation.
I would recommend Jordan Wilcox. It feels very good to not have the IRS on your back.
That's taxhelput.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Crews are wrapping up an accident on northbound I-15 in Utah County after 5th East American Fork. It had been blocking a right lane, causing some delays. And a small accident southbound I-15 in Salt Lake County after 7200 South in Midvale. They're out of traffic on the shoulder. Joseph Smith was martyred. Nauvoo was in chaos until God called young Brigham Young. Hundreds witnessed God manifesting his will. See 6 Days in August. Sneak peek October 7th. Tickets at Cinemark.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We might sneak up to 90 degrees Friday, but it's mostly 80s in the forecast for the foreseeable future. Nighttime lows stay just right around the mid-50s. Right now, 83 degrees and sunny. I'm Carol Hoffelmeyer from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as we continue to keep our eye on the Middle East, of course, the ballistic missile attack launched by Iran against Israel marks an escalation in that long-standing tension between the two Middle Eastern powers. It's a bold move. Of course, it comes in the wake of several Israeli military operations in the region, including strikes against Iran-backed groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. They're key leaders in that as well. So we want to look at some of the things under the headlines. We saw a lot of the headlines over the last 48 hours. We want to look at what really comes next and what's underneath all of those. Where is the United States in all of this? How does that play out? And really thrilled to have back on the program with us once again Eric Bazil Emil, a national security reporter, co-writer of Politico's National Security Daily, which if you want to really get to the core and the essence of things when it comes to national security, that's the place you want to go. And Eric, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back.
So let's dig into this a little bit. Of course, the ballistic missiles, I want to start with that targeted Israel on Tuesday, and what that actually means and how that is different from a lot of the back and forth that we have seen over the years between Israel and Iran.
Yeah, this series of events started back in April when Israel launched an airstrike against Iran's consulate in Damascus, and that took out one of the top commanders of the Iranian military. And at that time, we saw Iran launch a drone and ballistic missile attack with help from its proxies that Israel and its allies were very quickly able to dispatch. But since that incident in April, we've seen this ratcheting of tensions between Israel and Iran, partially, aggravated by, Israel's continued military operations in the Gaza Strip, but as well, the tensions that have been building up at the Israeli-Lebanese border. And these tensions have, come to a head more sharply in the last few weeks as Israel has stepped up its offensives towards Hezbollah in Lebanon and really seriously decapitated the leadership structure of Hezbollah, culminating in Friday's airstrike in Beirut that took out Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah and one of Tehran's top allies in the region. So all this, in this context, Iran has very much been trying to articulate a response to this. They had been warded off of successive attacks previously by U.S. back-channeling and other diplomatic efforts in the region. But clearly, Iran felt that it needed to respond in this moment. And that's a very difficult moment to de-escalate right now. Today at the UN Security Council, we saw Iran and Israel trading sharp barbs. Yeah. And it's very clear that both sides are locked in to, the glide path of tensions that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. And so as you watch that play out, of course, in April, you had the Biden administration really leaning in, suggesting both back channel directly and through the media that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should take the win and move on. And as you said, this glide path seems to be very different this time. Is there a path to de-escalation, or is Israel really locked into this strategy of escalate to de-escalate?
Israel is very locked into this strategy. We saw Israel's ambassador to the United Nations double down on this and essentially reject calls for de-escalation today, saying that it was putting Israel in an unfair position and painting, Iran as fundamentally the aggressor in this, which of course the Iranians disagree with. When we're looking at this, the administration is also not necessarily pushing back on the idea that some response is necessary. It was a very serious escalation from Iran. But where the administration is instead focusing its resources is on trying to restrain the options that are on the table. We saw the president today, he spoke to reporters, before his trip today, and he told them that the idea that, Israel could strike Iran's nuclear facilities was just not an option that the U.S. was supporting, and that any response from Israel had to be within proportion. So that's where we're starting to see some of these efforts. In general, I will also add that we have not seen the administration necessarily in private voice the same kinds of oppositions and reservations to military operations in Lebanon. They were very privately supportive, as my colleagues Aaron Banco and Nahal Tusi reported earlier this week. They were privately supportive of Israel's limited ground operations against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So the dynamic has also changed, where the administration is trying to allocate its influence.
Yeah, that's fascinating in terms of the incursion into Lebanon, those limited targeted strikes to take out some of those capabilities. And so dig into that, unpack that a little bit for us in terms of what that means and how that might impact this broader battle as it relates to Iran.
The reality is that a war between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has been a creeping target for a while. It's been a threat that the United States has been trying to avert. Amos Hochstein from the National Security Council has been dispatched several times to try to reduce the tension. But the reality is that Hezbollah and Israel have been launching rockets and trading fire at the northern border, which is called the Blue Line, since October 8th, the day after the Hamas attacks on October 7th of last year. And fundamentally, Israel views military operations in Lebanon as a necessity. Hezbollah, unlike Hamas, is just a bigger military threat. Hamas is more politically integrated, but Hezbollah has a lot more firepower that it can use against Israel. So Israeli officials have been keen to try to reduce what they had seen as a growing threat from Hezbollah, especially as Lebanon itself has dealt with self-inflicted economic and political crises. The danger, of course, is that Lebanon Israel finds itself in another long-scale war in Lebanon, like it did in the 80s and 90s, that ultimately did not resolve, the fundamental problem of Hezbollah.
Yeah, and so as you look at the forward path, obviously in the midst of a presidential election cycle, 34 days to go here in the U.S., how do you see that impacting kind of this shorter-term operation, whether it's on the ground, Israel moving north into Lebanon, or whether it's the back and forth between Israel and Iran? How does the presidential politics and the U.S.'s role impact that in the month ahead?
I think it's a different calculation now that Biden is no longer the nominee. And if Biden were also still running for re-election while this were going on, it would definitely make it much more complicated. But there are spillover effects, of course, on Vice President Kamala Harris and the perception of whether, Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz, if they're elected, are going to be able to manage these global crises. Republicans are certainly making a show of it on the campaign trail. It came up in last night's debate between Senator Vance and Governor Walz, and former President Trump at a rally yesterday used it to try to paint the Biden-Harris administration as very weak. So, there's clearly a political implication to all of this. How it's translating is harder to say. I certainly cannot imagine that the administration, even, absent the political context, right, would want to see, more tensions and more escalation in the Middle East, especially as the president is looking towards his general legacy in the Middle East. So, but it certainly doesn't help the sense of, being under the wire and being under pressure to avoid what would likely be a very costly and potentially very complicated military entanglement for the U.S. and its allies in the Middle East if it continues to get worse.
Yeah, no question. And just a final thought here in our last minute, Eric. Give us one thing that you're keeping your eye on that maybe is a little bit under the headline as we go forward.
The real question that I've had is what comes after all of this for Lebanon, because Lebanon, as I just kind of mentioned before, it was not a stable country because of that explosion in Beirut a few years ago. There's been political paralysis, and there's certainly risk of ethno-religious tensions because Lebanon is pretty neatly divided between Maronite Christians and Sunni and Shia Muslims that have been sharing power in a very tenuously negotiated political system. So there are real questions about whether that system could survive, a full-on Israeli military operation in southern Lebanon that calls into question whether the Lebanese state itself can operate. And, I certainly would like to know, that war, the civil war that was fought in Lebanon between those three sides was a very bloody and brutal war. So that is also, a dimension of this, how any of these military operations and these tensions could put the Lebanese people in the middle and how that could affect regional security as well, because that's how Hezbollah was actually created. It came out of the remnants of that conflict. So, that's definitely something that haunts policymakers. Secretary Blinken has alluded to this. It's definitely on their minds, too, as they're crafting their strategy.
Yeah, great perspective as always. Eric Basile-Emile, national security reporter, co-writer of Politico's National Security Daily. You can check out his piece today at Politico.com. Iran launches ballistic missile attack against Israel. And as always, it's a lot of the stuff underneath those headlines that we've got to think again about what we think we know in these situations. Eric, as always, thanks so much for joining us. And we'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. When the politicians speak and the headlines become a soupy noise.
Make it great again. Burdened by what has
been. And lost car keys and forgotten passwords overwhelm. It's time to turn off the screens and take a break. Join KSL for the 194th Semi-Annual General Conference of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Coverage begins Saturday morning at 9:30. Take conference with you at 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and on the app for KSL News Radio.
And now a minute of kindness brought to you by One Kind Act a Day. In today's inspiring story, we meet Lori Rowley, a cancer survivor who turned her battle into a beacon of hope. After facing stage 3 breast cancer, Lori found solace in creating Smiley Rocks, small hand-painted stones meant to bring comfort to her fellow patients. Starting with just 50 rocks, her initiative blossomed, and soon she was distributing thousands. With over 10,000 rocks shared at treatment centers and community events, Lori's kindness has touched countless lives. Known as the Sweet Lady, she proves that one simple act of kindness can inspire joy and resilience in others. Lori's journey reminds us all of the power of kindness. A Minute of Kindness is brought to you by One Kind Act a Day. Find out more online about the Power of Kind at thepowerofkind.org. That's thepowerofkind.org.
I started my soda weight loss journey over a year ago, and it is so nice to be heading into the fall and winter holidays looking and feeling so much better than I did at this time in 2023. Best of all, I let go of that 70 pounds of fat and didn't have to use any medications, get any injections, or deal with any crazy side effects. My fellow soda client Vicky got amazing results too.
I have shed over 72 pounds and lost 47.5 inches of body fat. And I am off of every medication for the first time in my life. Oh my gosh, I'm so ecstatic about that.
Well, that excitement's contagious, isn't it? If you start now, you could be down 30 to even 50 pounds by the end of the holidays. It's as simple as going to sodaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com and clicking on Request a Nutritionist Callback. Soda is the #1 rated weight loss company in America for client results and client satisfaction. And you know why? Because soda is, say it with me, state of the art.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds, which could be life-changing. I mean, you could put that money towards concert tickets for your daughter to see that singer who sings about painful breakups. And one song will inspire your little beauty to break up with that beast she's dating, Brian. Instead, she'll date someone who's nice and worthy of her love, not someone who addresses you and your spouse as bro. And it's all because you could save money switching at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states.
This report is brought to you by Macy's. Don't miss Macy's VIP sale. Use your coupon or Macy's card and take an extra 30% off the latest fall trends and save 15% off skincare, makeup, and more. Savings off regular and already reduced prices. Exclusions apply. Now at Macy's.
With Wendy's, breakfast burrito is everything you want for breakfast. Fresh cracked eggs, seasoned potatoes, American cheese, cheese sauce, bacon or sausage, all rolled up into one warm tortilla. Want the boss of breakfast burritos? Gotta be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's.
As the beautiful golds, reds, and bright yellows appear on the trees, the air turns crisp and the fall takes hold. Your fun changes from shorts and flip-flops to hiking boots and flannel shirts, along with the endless trails to hike or ATV. When you visit Bear Lake, you visit so much more than the ordinary. From a wildlife refuge to scenic trails to the shores of the beautiful Caribbean Blue Lake, everything takes on a whole new look. See it for yourself this fall, or plan your trip for the first winter snow, snowshoeing, snowmobiling, logs on a fire, as you warm your toes and sip warm cider in one of Bear Lake's cozy cabin getaways. To find out more about everything that's available to you and to book your stay, visit bearlake.org. Bear Lake, a little piece of paradise, just right outside your back door. See it for yourself. Visit scenicidaho.org.
Tim and Amanda.
One of the things I love about radio is that we are all hearing it at the same time. One of the differences between that and just scrolling on your phone is that I don't know when that story was posted. Maybe an hour ago, maybe 3 days ago.
To your point about who wrote it, where did it come from, and is it dated information, our hope every day is that we can provide a more broad spectrum of information on a single topic that you can then take and make decisions on your own.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Email from school about the incident today.
Scary.
You know, teachers like me, parents, we don't always know as much as you guys do about what's going on with other kids.
Half the time, it's rumors.
Yeah, but if you're ever concerned about a friend who's having trouble with alcohol, prescription drugs, anything, you need to tell an adult, someone you know and trust. That can be hard, but speaking up about a problem is what helping a friend is all about.
For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel neglected or unloved? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. After a midnight deadline failed to produce a labor agreement, the Union of Longshoremen have declared a strike. We're about 48 hours in. And yesterday on the program, we dug into this a little bit, had a conversation with Taylor Giorno, who covers business and lobbying for The Hill, co-authors The Hill's nightly business and economy newsletter. And we got into what this really means and what this is all about as it relates to the strike and what it might mean for all of us. So let's break this down. This is one of those, I don't think a whole lot of people are watching, but a whole lot of us are going to start noticing things if this goes on very long. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so shortly after midnight last night, around 47,000 longshoremen, so these are people that work at major ports in the United States, walked off the job after their union, the International Longshoremen's Association, sometimes called the ILA, and the U.S. Maritime Alliance, which is a group of employers, could not come to an agreement. And actually, a lot of retailers have been expecting this for a while. Negotiations broke down back in June over basically the use of an automated gate at a small port in Mobile, Alabama. And the two parties didn't meet for months. So even though there was some last-minute movement ahead of the midnight deadline, the two sides were ultimately not able to come to an agreement, and the strike began from ports all the way from Maine down the East Coast and into the Gulf of Mexico through Texas.
And so part of this was really driven by this whole element of automation in this. Break that down for us.
Yeah. So, everyone in the U.S. economy right now, if you're employed, is thinking about the future of how automation is going to change your job. And this is sort of one of the most high-profile examples of workers who are represented by a union actively negotiating with their employers for how it's going to impact the future of their work. There are lots of ways that these ports could be automated through cranes, the machines that move cargo, but the port workers don't want that. They want to keep their jobs. They want to keep basically a ban on the use of this automation so that they can continue to work there in the future. And so that's the real sticking point in these negotiations is these port workers want a ban on automation of cranes, gates, container moving trucks, in addition to some wage hikes that they say they are owed because they have helped these port owners bring in record profits in the wake of the pandemic. They worked while the rest of the world shut down. Right. So basically they want to make sure their jobs are protected, and they also want a slice of the pie that they say that they've helped generate for their employers.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that everyone relates to in those kind of those flashback moments of everything coming in and everything kind of shutting down in terms of supply chain and what was happening at the ports during the pandemic. This is one of those, and bonus points for quoting the Taft-Hartley Act, which we don't get to reference very often. But in your piece of The Hill, you actually broke this down and actually weighed in terms of where President Biden and the administration have been in terms of what they can do, where they can lean in, and what they're likely to do in this scenario.
Yeah. So first of all, President Biden has made it very clear he is not going to intervene to force an end to this strike. He said on Sunday that he was not going to invoke this thing called the Taft-Hartley Act, which is part of this 1947 law that set a lot of standards for labor practices, the National Labor Relations Board, but also put in this legal mechanism that would allow a president to ask a court to basically issue an injunction on a strike, basically an 80-day cooling off period to allow workers to go back to work while the two sides resume negotiations. And usually that's invoked in a time when the strike is going to imperil national health or safety. And since it was enacted, presidents have intervened in labor disputes using this 37 times, but it hasn't been used since 2002 when President George W. Bush intervened basically in a heated labor dispute between port workers and employers on the West Coast to basically, after a few days of striking, the employers ended up locking the workers out. And so George W. Bush basically used Taft-Hartley to get these employees back to work and for the labor negotiations to resume. Yeah. But again, President Biden has said that is a no-go. He came out and said that again today, even though a lot of business groups, including the Chamber of Commerce, have basically called on him to invoke this legal mechanism.
Yeah, and you pointed out in your piece that even if it's just a week long or so, that could create backlogs into November. Obviously, the further that goes, the more it will start impacting scarcity, which will cause prices to rise. And obviously, we're 35 days away from an election. What impact is that pressure, the political pressure, going to play on getting this thing resolved before we get to that first Tuesday of November?
Yeah, I mean, the political pressure on President Biden and Vice President Harris is a lot more in the direction of not intervening with something like Taft-Hartley. You know, President Biden has stated that he wants his legacy to be as the most pro-union president in history. Vice President Harris has gotten endorsements from a lot of the major labor unions. So they've dispatched Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, White House National Economic Council Director Lil Brainerd. Basically, they're working to encourage both sides to come to an agreement. But from a political perspective, they don't want to be seen as intervening in a way that's going to compromise workers' ability to collectively bargain. In terms of how a prolonged shutdown might impact consumers, the experts I've spoken to don't necessarily think that some of these economic pinches are going to be felt by consumers at all if this thing only goes on for maybe a week or two. And even if it goes on a little bit longer, these effects might not be felt until the holidays, for example. And that's in part because, as I said earlier, retailers have known for a while that this strike is coming, so they have gotten shipments in early. They've diverted shipments through the West Coast. However, customers might start seeing things like fruits disappearing from the shelves, particularly bananas. So stock up on bananas now. But in the long run, it could also it affect things like vehicles, steel, computers, and actually particularly alcohol. So.
All right, so bananas and alcohol are high on the priority list if you're looking for something to stock up for the holidays. That's your tip for the day.
Exactly.
Great insight. Taylor Giorno covers business and lobbying for The Hill, co-author of The Hill's nightly business and economy newsletter. And Taylor, great insight on all of this. We'll continue to monitor it closely. We'll have you back as this continues to unfold. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top local story. 3 months after a new law required police to start tracking road rage encounters, Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Cameron Roden gives us a look at just how bad it is.
The last 3 months that UHP's had, we've seen 41 incidents that UHP has handled. So still have quite a few road rage incidents so far this year.
That doesn't include any other agencies. It's difficult to know whether drivers are doing better or worse because no tracking system was in place before July. A woman from Heber City has been booked into jail accused of abusing an 11-month-old boy that she was babysitting. Police booking records show the baby was taken to Primary Children's Hospital last week after his mother learned that he was not doing well at the babysitters. Doctors told police they had to remove part of the baby's skull because of the trauma. Police arrested Elarieth Jimenez Marin. It will be up to prosecutors to decide whether to file charges. KSL's top national story this hour. President Biden says Israel is weighing how it will respond to the Iranian ballistic missile strikes this week.
Obviously, Iran has gone way it's way off court. We're going to put together a joint statement. It hasn't been done yet. It'll be done before too long, probably by the time we land. And there's going to be some sanctions imposed on Iran.
The president also opposes a potential Israeli strike against Iran's nuclear program. Iran launched nearly 200 missiles toward Israel yesterday. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow ended up 40 points, sitting at 42,197. S&P was flat. The NASDAQ was up by 15 points. How long will this nice weather last? We'll check the forecast coming up next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hi, I'm Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City with Advanced Window Products.
And I'm Jake, the other guy. Are your windows old and inefficient and driving up your energy bills?
It's time for an upgrade. Our energy-efficient windows not only look great, but also help you save on your utility bills.
And right now, we're offering an incredible deal, $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more.
That's right, $2,500 in savings to make your home more comfortable and energy efficient.
Plus, we offer a lifetime warranty on all our windows, so you can have peace of mind.
Don't wait. Call us today at 801-850-9100 or visit us at advancedwindows.com to schedule your free estimate. We also offer payment plans as low as $150 a month.
From our factory to your installation in 8 weeks or less. Call us today at 801-850-9100 or visit us at advancedwindows.com to schedule your free estimate.
Advanced Window Products, Utah's window experts.
Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Jump on your brooms and join us for a fantastic fall break. Here's what's brewing. The North Logan Pumpkin Walk, October 10th through the 15th. Okay, there's no way to describe this amazing and colorful experience, but I will try. There are hundreds of carved pumpkins, plus dozens of displays crafted from painted pumpkins, gourds, and other random vegetables. You have to see it for yourself, and it's free. Celebrate Utah's Harvest Heritage October 18th and 19th at the American West Heritage Center's Fall Harvest Festival. Grain threshing, apple pressing, pony rides, train rides, antique tractors, games, and fun. Get your scream on all month long for spooky encounters on the historic downtown Logan Ghost Tour, or traipsing through a couple of giant corn mazes that may or may not be haunted. Check out live theater and music performances, great restaurants, golf, and USU football games. Head to Logan for funky fall fun. Explore logan.com/fall.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. The latest with Ricky Meese.
We've had just a tiny bit of slowing southbound I-15 going through Roy. It may just be the construction, but something to be aware of. Also for downtown drivers, remember we have a roadblock due to an earlier fatal accident northbound 7th East between 800 and 700 South. You want to avoid that and take an alternate route. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We are looking at temperatures in the 80s all the way through the next 7 days with lows in the upper 50s. Right now, 84 degrees at the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
On a day like today, we talk a lot about what's going on as it relates to national security. But when it comes to this world of national security, there's one critical issue that often flies underneath the radar, and that is the timely funding of America's military. And there's all kinds of deadlines that continue to loom, the consequences of delayed budgets and continuing resolutions, all the bureaucratic inconveniences that come with that. And the recurring challenge of all of this not only impacts the safety and well-being of our service members, which should be first, last, and always, but it also threatens Americans' global competitiveness and our national security. And so particularly on a day like today, we want to get underneath the headlines of what's going on. We've been covering that for you here on KSL News Radio. I want to bring in now Elaine McCusker, someone we often turn to, senior fellow with the American Enterprise Institute. She focuses on defense strategy, budget, innovation, the U.S. military, and national security. And Elaine, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back on. And obviously on a day like today, you see a lot of things start to play out. And this is one of those, your area, I always say this is what we do when we don't have to do anything or when we can procrastinate, often ends up biting you in the end. And are we starting to see that as it plays out in the Middle East? A lot of these things, because of the way we're funding and not funding the military, that we're not really getting the performance we need when we actually need it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, here we are, another October 1st, another temporary funding extension that essentially just continues what we were doing last year into the new year. And this causes damage to our national security, to our industrial base, to our service members and their families, and honestly to the taxpayer too, as we are not getting the most bang for our buck. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, this damage is both avoidable and self-inflicted. Passing the defense bill is the main job responsibility of the representatives we send to Washington, D.C., yet they almost never do their job on time. In fact, America's military has lost nearly 1/3 of the last 15 years to CRs, and we can't buy back that time. And even if we could, we wouldn't have the money because we waste billions in buying power during CRs. And really, to understand how debilitating this is, imagine running a race and spending 25 to 30% of the time just looking for your shoes. What are your chances of winning that race? And right now, we're in a CR that lasts until December 20th, so that's 81 days, which means we'll be losing up to $8.2 billion in buying power during that time. And like you said, the damage that these do really spans the globe here, from impacts on our service members to, as you said, our competitiveness. And meanwhile, our adversaries are not stuck in this kind of thing. And as a matter of fact, a recent commission that looked at the national defense strategy said that China is outpacing the United States in many ways. And we can easily see this in shipbuilding. China has become the world's top shipbuilding and shipping nation with 230 times more shipbuilding capacity than the United States. Wow. And that's just kind of one example of what we're up against.
Yeah, and one of the things that you always point out that I think is so important for all of us to understand is that when we get one of these continuing resolutions, we always remind Congress September 30th comes every single year, always has, always will, without fail. And yet we get these continuing resolutions, and I want you to just walk us through the crucial consequence of all of that, which is if we have a program that's not working, we can't change it. Or if something's working really well, we can't add to it because we're functioning off of something from the last year or from 2 years previous.
That's exactly right. And one of the many conditions of the CR, in addition to just sort of extending what we're doing, is we can't start anything new. We can't increase production. And we basically just remain stagnant. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which he's the highest ranking military officer in the United States. And by the way, he's a very smart and calm guy. He said CRs significantly impact and degrade acquisition of the warfighting capability and capacity required to defend the United States and our interests. And this year, in order to try to help people understand this a little bit better, I looked at just 3 different examples of consequences. The first is lives lost during training accidents because operating under CRs can mess with the training schedule and with equipment maintenance. Number 2, poor living conditions for U.S. service members and their families due to maintenance and renovation of buildings that are not getting done. And 3, kind of as we already mentioned, increased costs and timelines for the stuff that we buy. And by the way, older equipment that we're having to continue to operate during CRs because we're not buying what we need actually cost more to maintain.
Wow. Yeah, that is all of it in a nutshell right there in terms of the impact. We always say, oh, there's a CR, great, we avoided a government shutdown. And that's good. We don't want a government shutdown. But we also have to look at all of the downstream repercussions of Congress not doing their job. And on a day like today where we're watching a lot of things that impact our military women and men around the world, we've got 40,000 of them in the region. And if they're having to deal with old equipment or maintaining that because we couldn't buy the new stuff because Congress did a continuing resolution, those are real costs. And Elaine McCusker, always appreciate your insight and perspective. I want to have you come back, and we're going to continue to dig into this because I think it's a crucial conversation that we've got to get front and center, both for our representatives to understand and for the American people to hold them accountable for, because this is one of those things that really matters in the end. Elaine, as always, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Such an important set of pieces that Elaine put on the table for us there as it relates to the funding. And it's one of those things, we always have all these conversations leading up to a potential government shutdown. And then we have very few conversations on the other side when Congress does not do their job, they just do a continuing resolution. They kick the can down the road. In this case, they've kicked it to the middle of December so we can go through the drama of the fake fights and the false choices just before the holidays. But there are real consequences, and Elaine pointed out just 3 of those for us. And we don't think about that. So, again, a continuing resolution just keeps everything going as is, status quo. But she just pointed out 3 of the big ones. Training. If you don't have more funds, or if you're based on what you had spent before, you can't do all of those training schedules. And, of course, that impacts safety for all of our service members. And we talked about the replacement and maintaining old equipment because we can't buy the new stuff or we can't get the right parts, so we're just doing patchwork stuff. That's both dangerous, it's inefficient, and it's ineffective. Not to mention the other area that Elaine noted, which was the housing in terms of our military families. And so, again, I'm very happy we did not have a government shutdown, but there never in the history of ever should be a threat of one. Ever. There's no reason. It's unacceptable. It has to be done every year. It is the job of the Congress. As I remind everyone running for office, if you don't want to do the job that you're running for, you shouldn't run for the job. And we as voters, if we decide, you know what, that person doesn't really want to do the job that we elected them to do, then we should vote for someone else to be in that job and give those who don't want to do the job that they were elected to do, give them an opportunity somewhere else. And I know that's easy to say and hard to do, but we have to do the hard thing because we have to have the hard conversation. Because as our guest Elaine pointed out, look, this is putting us behind. The military is losing that buying power. We're falling behind in terms of our readiness just to protect and defend our national security interests, not looking at anywhere else in the world, just looking at our own. And so the consequences of these continuing resolutions are real. And they cost real lives, by the way. Some of these training accidents that clearly could be preventable if we were working on the right equipment, if we were having the right number of training schedules and training sessions, those things are preventable. And that's a tragedy. And so we've got to do this part different. And always appreciate it when Elaine McCusker comes on to help us walk through the real costs. The real cost of not doing the job you were elected to do. There's a lot of things you can debate. There's a lot of things that we can quibble over in terms of what Congress should and shouldn't do. But funding national security is really clear. It's really simple. It's one of the very few responsibilities Congress actually has, and it should be the first one they get done every year. All right, we'll step aside for one last break. We'll come back with some final thoughts on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Utah's biggest used RV Palooza is back and better than ever. This October 10th through the 12th at the Shops at Southtown, you're getting the best deals of the season on used travel trailers, fifth wheels, toy haulers, motorhomes, and more. Shop gently used RVs at the show and save thousands over fall pricing anywhere else. Find deals starting as low as $9,995, like on a 2021 Forest River Viking LS Series M238 LS tent camper. Plus, shop select new RVs at used pricing, not to mention blowout pricing on all remaining 2024s in stock. You'll also enjoy no payments until 2025 on approved credit. Finish your fall camping season in style without a single monthly payment. And if you've got a trade, we want it. Bring it to the show to get maximum trade-in value. We're even including a 1-year Fish Fix membership with every RV purchase. Your fast track to RV service repairs. And don't miss out on our Hunter Special section to keep your hunting season going strong. All this plus free admission to the Utah Used RV Palooza. 3 days only, October 10th through the 12th at the Shops at Southtown. Open daily at 10 a.m. Sponsored by Bish's RV. See you there.
Want to keep your gas-powered engines running like new? Stable's proprietary formulas are proven by third-party testing to outperform the competition in keeping fuel fresh, preventing corrosion, and cleaning the entire fuel system. With Stable, you can have confidence you are doing the right thing for your engine's long-term health. Just pour into your gas can or fuel tank, then top off with fresh fuel. At every fill-up or when you store, start with Stable. Available where fuel additives are sold.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
This week's movie show brought to you by Sound Sleep Medical. Get a free sleep screening and a free sleep consultation by tuning in Friday morning. Sound Sleep Medical with 7 locations in Utah.
Nearly 70% of Utah's land is controlled by the federal government, severely limiting Utah's ability to actively manage and protect our natural resources. Our families, businesses, and communities know there's a better way. Utahns have been good stewards of our public lands for generations. That's why we're asking each and every Utahn to get informed, speak up, and learn more at standforourland.utah.gov.
We have 5 kids, 2 dogs, and we've bought 4 houses in the last 12 years. So our realtors helped us through the complexities of buying a house, the legalities of different property rights, right-of-ways, building concerns, or even ordinances, right?
If we were to try to do this on our own, we would have made a lot of financial mistakes. The realtor is now part of our family. She's who helps our family get to wherever our next chapter is.
Discover how a realtor can make a real difference at myrealtorstory.com.
You know, in Box Elder County, they're all about the bucket list. Want to go birding at the premier birding destination in the western United States? Well, check off the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. How about land art? The spiral jetty and sun tunnels will leave you inspired. Or stand on the spot where the Union and Central Pacific Railroads joined and forged the destiny of a nation. Yep, Golden Spike National Historical Park is like no other place. Check. Splash, boat, camp, or fish your day away? Willard Bay State Park will guarantee a good time. Soak in a natural hot spring with the highest mineral content in the world? That would be Crystal Hot Springs. You'll feel rejuvenated. Eat at Utah's original steakhouse. Maddox Ranch House is perfection. Check. A 1920s diner. The Idle Owl Cafe will transport you back in time. As you empty your Box Elder County bucket list, you'll find a whole new set of adventures to fill it up again. Fill up your bucket list at visitboxeldercounty.com.
Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates. This weekend only, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandswimspasale.com.
Get ready for the spooky season by eliminating all of the spooky dirt, grime, and spills. Halloween brings out the best in people, but also the scariest dirt from all the foot traffic. Carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified. Right now, you can get your entire home Zero Resified and get 3 rooms of carpet cleaning starting out at only $109 and take 20% off your air duct cleaning. Don't let a misdeal haunt you. Schedule at ZeroRes.com or call 801-288-9376 and ask for this special. Autumn is in the air. Now's the time when little ghouls and boys should visit This Is the Place Heritage Park's Little Haunts. Little Haunts opens Friday and Saturdays in October, starting October 11th through the 25th. Little Haunts is a family-friendly adventure where you can dress up and experience the not-so-scary, creepy-crawly encounters. Delight in friendly witches. Ride a train. Sip cider and experience storytelling in cooler mountainside air. Changing leaves surrounded by wagons loaded with pumpkins. Your adventure wouldn't be complete without the hands-on learning and immersive experience of take-home crafts. Petting live animals. A fall pony ride. Combined with all your favorite Halloween trick or sweet treat traditions. For fall family adventure, hours, and Little Haunts information, visit thisistheplace.org.
Save $2,500 on a new furnace and air conditioner from Any Hour Services. For more information, call Any Hour Services or schedule a free estimate online at anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Maria Chaleos. First, 7th East near Liberty Park in Salt Lake City remains closed after a deadly crash there. No further information is available at this time. Second, President Biden says he's opposed to Israel potentially striking at Iran's nuclear program. Israel says it's planning a significant retaliation. And third, Utah Highway Patrol troopers say they've responded to 41 different cases of road rage since a new law increasing penalties took effect in July. Right now, 84 degrees in Salt Lake City, and back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, of course, we started the day talking about the big vice presidential debate last night. Winners and losers, a lot of prognostication in terms of what did and then what didn't happen and how that is all going to impact or not impact where things go from here. We're 34 days out from the election day, and there's a long, long way to go. But there are very few people who are in that undecided category. Who haven't really made up their mind. And, of course, there's a whole host of people who have disconnected from the process. The number of people that don't vote is very high in this country. And the question is, will there ever be enough of a momentum or a big enough why for them to change direction and re-engage in the process and show up and vote? In some cases, it is just general apathy. In some cases, it's outright cynicism. In some cases, it's just dissatisfaction with where we are, and people are losing confidence and losing hope in terms of whether they can make a difference, whether their voice is important, whether their vote actually matters or not in the process. And to me, a lot of this comes down to something that I say often in organizations. If you've got a problem with something in the organization, the first place you better ask yourself about is leadership, because most of it is a leadership problem. I've been in large institutions that say, well, we just don't have the money. Well, if you don't have the money, it's a leadership problem. Someone hasn't made the case either to the donors or the people who fund the institution, to investors, to the board, that you need more. That's not a money problem. That's a leadership problem. And I think a lot of the things that we're facing in this nation, including a lot of the things with voters feeling so disconnected, is because we haven't had leaders who have really made that case. You always have to make the case. And so we watched last night as the debate played out, and one of the things that kept echoing in my head is this idea. We've talked about it several times during the course of the day today, and that is the real test of leadership is, what do you do when you don't have to do anything? I mean, we all get what you have to do in the middle of a crisis. We all get it when there's something right in front of you that has to be dealt with, and that can be pretty revealing. But I think what is more revealing is what you do when you don't have anything to do. Do you just coast along? Do you just drift along? Do you do, as we talked about in the last segment, like Congress? Do you decide, well, we don't actually have to fund the government until September 30th? And so, it's only the 20th of January. We don't really need to go through that appropriations process. We really don't need to have those committee hearings or pass each of those individual things. We got plenty of time. And you drift. And that's a lack of leadership. And you can point fingers and place blame, and you can do all of that all you want, but it's a leadership issue. And once that drifting begins, it seeps into a whole host of other places. I've been thinking a lot this week. I've shared this with a couple of friends. It's a quote from Harvey Clough. He said, "No intelligent person in youth or old age should merely drift along. Look the world squarely in the face, listen and learn, for there are grand lessons every minute." And this whole concept of drifting being dangerous. Drifting is dangerous. It's dangerous whether you're driving your car or you're in a relationship or driving your career. Because drifting, if you're driving, drifting can send you off into the ditch. Or if you cross lanes of traffic, it can be fatal. Or drifting just slows you down, if nothing else. I think personally drifting is all kinds of dangerous, especially when you're going through transition periods or when you're dealing with a lot of distractions in your world. It's easy, especially in our digital age. We got all kinds of things to distract us and allow us to drift through an hour, a couple of hours, an afternoon, a day, a week. I hear salespeople say this all the time. Well, I'm just going to get to the end of the month, and I'm really going to pick up the pace when we get into that new quarter. And so they drift. And when they drift, they fall behind. They might drive their career into the ditch. They may miss an incredible opportunity that they would have had if they would have kept on path and on course. And so I think it's true. We have to be careful of drifting. And we also have to recognize that, especially in our nation's history, most of the extraordinary things that have happened have come in some pretty rough times. Most of the great companies have been started in horrible economic conditions. Most of the great breakthroughs have come during seasons that people could have just said, well, let's just wait it out. Let's just hold the line. Let's just wait until things get a little bit better. Then we'll really engage and go. They could have drifted. But there are those who take advantage of that, who do make a difference, who actually lead in the most inopportune times because they choose not to drift. And as we evaluate leaders up and down the ticket, everything from local city council all the way to the presidency of the United States, that's a good question to ask. What does this person do when they don't have to do anything? Are they willing to drift along? Are they really willing to just ride the momentum that they currently have? Do they answer hard questions? Do they sit for tough interviews? Do they engage in tough policy debates about hard things and hard choices we need to make as a nation? That's the kind of leaders we've got to get to if we're going to get where we really want to go. Drifting's not going to cut it. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. 84 degrees in Salt Lake. KSL's top story. Utah's ever more dangerous roads. 3 deadly crashes today.
UHP's had. We've seen 41 incidents that UHP has handled.
Keep in mind the number of cases I found KSL reported aren't exact figures, but doing a quick search for articles from January through June of